So today at Gilbert White's House and Gardens, we are putting something very special on display. This is a letter from Gilbert White to the antiquarian John Loveday. It was purchased with help from the Friends of National Libraries, and we are really excited to be able to finally put this on display. So John Loveday, like I said, was an antiquarian. He wrote for the Gentleman's Magazine, and he was particularly interested in history, archaeology, as well as writing on country houses. As an alumni of Magdalen College, John Loveday was the perfect person for Gilbert White to discuss a subject that was very close to Gilbert's interests: Selborne Priory. What this letter is showing us is a little bit like the natural history in the Natural History and Antiquities of Selborne, where Gilbert White is discussing the topics of the day and the questions that Gilbert White has with other naturalists. We can see here that he's doing exactly the same thing, but with historians. Gilbert White here is continuing a conversation that he had in person with John Loveday, and has a couple of questions about Selborne Priory in researching for the Natural History and Antiquities of Selborne. We can see that he is doing his own primary research and that he's questioning some of the sources that he's read and wants Loveday to try and verify that information with his own knowledge of the records of Magdalen College. Interesting things about this letter is that it looks, when first looking at it, like two different people have written it. There's one very distinct handwriting, and then there's the handwriting that we more commonly associate with Gilbert White. You only have to look at any page of the manuscript to be able to recognise his very easily readable hand. This could simply be a case, a little bit like all of us, where our handwriting changes day to day. It could be that these bits that have the more typical Gilbert White hand were added later. In fact, we think they probably were. It's the end of the letter, but also a little insertion here where he's quoting from a text, so he probably had to wait and find the book. And he was using a different pen that had a different thickness. It could be that he was trying a little bit harder with his handwriting at the beginning of the letter and was a little less careful towards the end. Who knows? It could be somebody else's handwriting. But we would love to know what you think, so why don't you come on by? The letter will be on display for a good few months. Have a look and see what you think.